Yes, good morning and welcome to Citizen Extra, the Friday edition with me, Fred Indimuli. Now, this past week, news outlets have been awash with headlines denoting a push for those seeking to vie for political office to be vetted on their integrity. Indeed, both the National Assembly and the Senate have indicted two top politicians and have asked IEBC not to clear them for the elections. Civil society organizations, meanwhile, have come up with a list of 20 politicians, including 2 former cabinet secretaries and 7 governors, whom they want barred from vying for office in the August polls over integrity questions. Yet questions linger. Can IEBC really bar anyone from running in the elections? Has the electoral agency ever disqualified an aspirant based on his or her integrity? What about the electorate? How can we readily elect into public office individuals whose integrity is questionable? Have we set the integrity bar too low? That will be our main discussion today. Also, 73 days to the elections, quite a number of initiatives to foster peace and cohesion are underway across the country. These efforts are geared towards avoiding a repeat of the post-poll chaos witnessed after the 2007 elections. Now, 10 years after that dark time and with at least one election in between, why is peace in Kenya still so fragile? What are the main concerns this time round, and just who is being targeted by these initiatives? We'll be discussing these and a lot more on this particular session of Citizen Extra. Now, in studio this morning, we're privileged to have Irungu Houghton, an Associate Director, Society for International Development, that is SEED. We also do have David Kiplagat Kerich, an advocate, and also the Jubilee Party nominee for the Baringo Central Parliamentary seat. Also in studio, we do have policy analyst Mombi Mungai. Good morning and welcome. Now, 20 politicians have been flagged as unfit to contest in the upcoming elections over integrity issues. This list has been compiled by civil society watchdogs under the umbrella Kenya Integrity Alliance. This is Transparency International, the Society for International Development, which is represented here by one of our panelists, and Zalendo Trust, as well as Inuka Trust. They say these politicians have unanswered questions on corruption and unethical conduct. And let's start from there. When Irungu Houghton, 20, we do have more than 16,000 aspirants. How come you only have 20 on this list? I should think that the list could be longer.
Morning, Fred. First of all, let me just thank you again for keeping this issue in the public domain. It is a matter of public interest. The list that was released on Thursday that contained the 20 names, I guess the report operates on 2 levels. The first is essentially to establish the principle upon which candidates that are running in the elections, the 16,000 that you've just mentioned, on what basis they should be cleared to come before the public for votes on August 8th. The second level of this list, I think, is to essentially test the methodology with regards to what we say is 20 individuals who have very clearly been named and adversely in constitutional commissions or independent offices or parliamentary reports, and have cases in court or have ongoing investigation cases. So this is really the litmus test, I think, that we've proposed that the AICC and IEBC should apply with regards to an ethical standard for these folks. The list is available for the public to look at. There's been tremendous debate about it. Most of the debate has been, sadly, I think, people proposing who else should be on the list. As the National Integrity Alliance, we're essentially standing on these 20 individuals as being really the dividing line between an election that has integrity or an election that essentially is more of the same and endangers the country's future in the years to come.
Don't you think you run the risk of being accused of targeting some individuals, because clearly, even as you said, most of the feedback has been that the list should be longer?
I would have wished the debate to really be that the list should be shorter, because that would establish that there is a culture of integrity, there's a culture of leadership in this country that really is much higher than what we've seen. Before maybe I can talk a little bit about the methodology so that your viewers are familiar with what we did. We spent many days looking at various independent commission reports, parliamentary reports, the AICC reports, court cases. We looked at probably 1,500 cases of corruption and abuse of office. And based on that, we decided to choose 20. So it is, yes, a selection of a larger number of people, but we believe that these 20 represent probably the dividing line between a culture of integrity and a culture really of impunity and abuse of office. Now, having said this, the 20 individuals that have been named, we are not, as the National Integrity Alliance, proposing that they be prosecuted, that they be held criminally liable for these cases. That really is the work of other agencies. We are simply saying that based on Chapter 6 and based on the Integrity and Leadership Act, these individuals fall short of the threshold that is required in those institutions. And I think Kenyans should really look at those two documents carefully, because I think one of the things that I always hold to this is, if you are a public servant and you do not bring honor to your office, then you have no business occupying that seat. As somebody once said a few minutes ago, we are really not looking for occupants to occupy public offices. We're looking for leaders, and leaders have to be beyond reproach. They have to be demonstrable evidence that they are able to manage the monies. Just to be very graphic, these 20 individuals are probably responsible for about 16 billion shillings of loss to the country.
Okay, and probably just for the sake of our viewers, if I had mentioned the 20 names on that particular list, they include Kirinyaga Jubilee Governor nominee Anne Waiguru, Governors Alfred Mutua, Evans Kidero, Hassan Joho, Kenneth Lusaka, Okoth Obado, Mwangi Wairia, and Cyprian Awiti. Others on the list are Mike Sonko, Gladys Bosch-Sholei, Elizabeth Ongoro, George Ochilo Ayako, and Matthew Lemporkel. Ferdinand Waititu, Alfred Keter, Asman Kamama, Moses Kuria, Oscar Sudi, Samuel Kazungu Kambi, and Stephen Murathi Kambi are also on that list. Now, Bwana David Kiplagat Kericho, an advocate of the High Court, the question is, do we have precedence? Can you remember a case in point where IEBC actually barred any aspirant? Because this is not the first election we're going with this chapter of the Constitution in place. The Constitution was promulgated in 2010. We've already been through one election. Do you think IEBC has ever been called upon to bar anyone in terms of integrity, and have they done so?
Thank you, Fred. Thank you very much. Now, this is a tricky issue, because we're faced with a situation as a country. We are faced with a situation where we have to balance between issue of morality and legality. Now, to answer your question, I don't recall any time when IEBC actually went and barred a candidate. The reason is, it lacks the legal mandate, or it has the legal mandate, but you see the efficacy. On what authority does IEBC got to stop or to bar a candidate? Because everybody will come and say, yes, I am presumed innocent until proven guilty. That is what the Constitution provides. That is on Chapter 4. Chapter 4 talks about the presumption of innocence.
Yes.
Now, when these 20 people are faced with that situation, they will of course come and say, look here, we are still innocent. We cannot be barred. And IEBC says, okay, the issue of Chapter 6. Chapter 6 requires that the issue of integrity, the issue of morality, the issue of you have to bring honor to the office and all that. Now, that is an issue which we have to face as a country. And I think the IEBC will have to go a step ahead, as to go to court and get a court order, so that they can bar these people. Without a court order, I think it will be difficult.
So it is more or less an exercise in futility what Bwana Irungu Houghton and his colleagues are engaging in, because it's going nowhere. Is that what you're saying, Bwana Kirich?
I'm not saying exactly that it's not going anywhere, but because they still have room. They can go to court and get an order from the court. They can get a declaration from the Constitutional Court to say so and so is bad. But without that, I'm afraid that they may not go anywhere.
Okay, Mumbi Mungai, of course, apart from this list by the civil society, of course, the headlines this week have been awash about what's happening in Parliament as well. We're talking about the National Assembly adopting a report by its Public Accounts Committee with regard to a probing to the NYS scandal. That particular report blames squarely on the nominee, Jubilee Party nominee for Kirinyaga Governor, that's Anne Waiguru. The Senate at the same time has another push. The Senate's Public Accounts and Investments Committee wants Wycliffe Oparanya, that's the governor for Kakamega County, barred from seeking a re-election because he has basically ignored summons to appear before that particular committee. Now, this is indictment by very serious authority, Parliament. This is a very serious institution in the country. Yet the IEBC says if any of these individuals actually file an appeal, then IEBC cannot do anything about it. If at all it's that serious, that even an indictment by a House of Parliament is not enough to bar anyone from seeking public office, what about the civil society presenting a list of 20 that we actually think should be longer? Do you think it's heading anywhere?
I think, like you said earlier, this is actually our opportunity, or the country's opportunity, to set a precedent and actually say that they are serious about the sort of leaders that we're electing. Development process is very tedious. It's very crucial for us to be able to get the right leaders on the floor. So civil society being able to list this is just one sector of the Republic of Kenya. I'm also seeing other citizens also enjoining themselves to also, not particularly enjoin themselves in that particular case, but also take to court members of, let's say current incumbents that are trying to run again for the same reason. So I think it's showing that people are waking up and are also looking at their obligations, not just as the citizenry and going to put in a vote, but they're seeing the obligations as more long-term and more involving in the development of Kenya. So I don't think it's an exercise in futility. Things happen step by step, and this is maybe one step of many more. And it's very interesting to be here, seeing, looking at it as it evolves. Yeah.
But Houghton, of course, you must be very honest with yourself. Do you genuinely believe that something will happen to any of those people you've listed?
I think something has already happened. If you look at it, over the last 48 hours, after we released the list, the organizations went into listening mode. We have listened to the responses of the particular aspirants. We've listened to taxi drivers, security officers, domestic workers, people on matatus, and so on. And what we've been hearing, and in fact even many viewers and listeners on the mass media shows and Twitter and various places. And there are a number of things that I think are kind of interesting. So one response has really been from people who say nothing is going to change. This is an exercise in futility. And I think we have to recognize that Kenya, collectively and probably individually, we're in a state of depression. We have seen so much graft, so much corruption over the last 5 years that we actually don't believe that this can change. And maybe even more worrying is that we are in a state where we actually don't want to hope that our institutions, our Chapter 6 institutions, will have the courage to be able to apply the law. We don't want to be disappointed by our political parties that they too will apply the law. And we don't want to be disappointed by individual candidates who we know have fallen short of the glory of Chapter 6, that they themselves will not be able to redeem themselves and restore their image and their credibility before they come before us to vote. So I think first of all we have to recognize that actually what is happening is historic, and it is really looking at how do we develop a culture of national values rather than a culture that is simply governed by a set of laws. But just because David has brought it up, let me just touch on a couple of laws, because there is a narrative, I think, that is unhelpful at this point, that what we're proposing to do is not based on law. Chapter 6 of the Constitution, the Principles of Public Finance in Article 232, the qualifications for election, moral and ethical subsidiary legislations, like the Public Finance Management Act, like the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act, like the Leadership and Integrity Act and the Elections Act itself, and the Public Procurement and Disposal Act. All this legislation is very clear in terms of what represents a fall below the threshold, the ethical threshold of Chapter 6. To pin this conversation to a criminal standard, I think, is headed for a predictable end. Let me just illustrate that very graphically. We looked at 1,500 cases. Viewers probably can guess how many cases of conviction do we have on corruption over the last 5 years. Let me just tell the Republic, it is 180 cases of corruption. Many of those people are procurement officers, clerical workers, constables, you know, even the Music Copyright Association staff.
Yes.
They are essentially lower level civil servants and public servants. We have no single person convicted in the last 5 years, despite the amount of corruption we've seen. So I think we need to be very clear that a criminal standard, in the context of, you know, our legal system, will probably have many of the people that we have seen in the scandals that are recorded very clearly in constitutional and statutory bodies' reports. They will probably be with us for the next 10 years, continuing to manage public funds and to lead the public in spite of their clear record that they have no
hence our concern. You just mentioned 180 cases of corruption before the courts, no single conviction, not a single one.
180 cases, conviction cases. There are many, many thousands of corruption cases, including the individuals that we've listed.
Yes. In a short while, one of the individuals listed on this list of 20 will be making an address, addressing the media, and you can see the pictures there on your screen. That is Uasin Gishu Jubilee nominee for the position of Woman Representative Gladys Bos-Shole. She's on that list. She will be addressing the media with regard to this integrity question. But Bwana Kirich, of course, looking at it, even as Bwana Irungu says, probably the bar has been set too low, that you have to be convicted by a court of law, and even after that, if you appeal, then that is enough to guarantee you room to vie for office. Do you think that is where we shot ourselves in the foot?
Oh, thank you, Fred. Now, the issue, I don't think it is the issue of setting the bar too low. It's that there is absence of proper legislation to bring Chapter 6 to life.
You're saying we need more legislation?
Yes, we need more legislation, because Chapter 6 is very clear. It says you must, it is a position of trust. You must demonstrate high morality, you know, high integrity and all that. Now the issue is this: who goes to court to say so and so has not met that requirement? So someone like Gladys Bos-Shole, she's my good friend, my classmate. She will of course go and say the same thing and say, look here, I am not convicted. Yes. I'm still innocent, and my people have nominated me, and Chapter 4 of the Constitution will, you know, support her and say she's actually innocent. So the issue here we need proper legislation to put efficacy to Chapter 6, because I'm afraid as long as that chapter stays the way it is, it will all be moral issue. Everybody knows. Let me
interrupt David a little bit, because I've just listed 5 core pieces of legislation that reflect not just the electoral, the management of elections, but also the management of public offices and public finance. My sense is that we have enough laws, we have actually enough institutions, and what happened in Senate yesterday was really important, I think. I mean, I think the statement by Senate was, first of all, Senate is now waking up. They have realized they actually have powers to summon and even arrest public servants or state leaders who do not come before them and are not able to respond to the charges. And I think the response from EACC and IEBC is really also quite critical in terms of understanding that those two institutions, they know their role. They know that their role primarily is to not clear candidates that have a smirch or a smeared character in the past. Now, to simply subject all of this back to the courts, I think is completely unnecessary, given the legislation we have already, and given the groundswell of public opinion that we really cannot survive another 5 years of people being subjected to lengthy court processes. You know, there are 66 ways in which we documented this last year in a publication which is available on our website. There are 66 ways that actually people abscond from the courts and obstruct court justice, including everybody falling sick.
On technicalities.
On technicalities,
yes.
So we cannot essentially, and I don't think we have to, I think the law is very clear that there are administrative actions that can be taken by the IEBC and the EACC that are completely within their mandate and are completely within Chapter 6 and also the subsidiary legislation.
Don't you think that probably the judiciary created the problem when they ruled on a similar matter, issues of integrity, probably to do with the ICC, when they were asked whether or not those individuals who had been indicted by the ICC could still be cleared to run for political office, and the Supreme Court, the High Court rather, I think, ruled in the affirmative, that just by that simple ruling, then that set the precedent. That therefore everything else going to court, that would be the same bar.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I think I think that's why the nation needs to watch very carefully what happens with the Supreme Court in the next few days, which is the Kenya National Commission for Human Rights have requested an advisory from the Supreme Court on what interpretation should we give to Chapter 6 in this context. I mean, the case that you are referring to, of course, is the ICC case, and there are various people that are already beginning to develop an argument that the list of 20 is actually heading for either the Deputy President or the President, which is very far from the truth. I think what's really important, and then there are some parts of the Republic that actually want the list to include those two offices. But let's be very clear and be factual. The list of 20 does not include the ICC too, who have now been exonerated by the ICC. But I think what is important, and Kenyans need to follow this very carefully, is that there are at least 7 conflicting judgments that have come through the different lower courts on this issue. And I think we have courts saying that that corrupt individuals should not really, aspirants should not really be subjected to court processes, and that they really should be eliminated at the level of the polls, and the Court of Appeal has no power. So there are various conflicting jurisdictions. I think what we need to do is we need to see the Supreme Court give us a ethical, fair standard that leaves everybody protected. And
that will be in response to the KNCHR petition. Let's now head to Eldoret, where Gladys Bose-Sholay and her supporters are currently addressing the media. Let's listen in.
Down to the MCA, kule Tagayat, kule Tarabo Nyaninlen, kule Barsombe, kule Mosbridge, the word kuangalia kwamba county pata to vote to our party.
We do apologize for that poor signal. We'll be going back there momentarily once we do have a stable signal to listen to Gladys Bose-Sholay and her supporters addressing the media in as far as integrity questions that have been asked. Mombi Mongai, surely listening to this gentleman, the law definitely, that's where the entire discussion is, the judiciary, the legislation. But do you think that it should be more of a moral issue, that probably as a society we do have a problem with our value system? Because looking at the other jurisdictions, other dispensations, you do not have to wait for a court conviction for you to step aside from public office, so that once integrity questions have been asked, a simple question has been asked, a simple doubt has been created, then you just leave office. That in Kenya you have to, and the joke is that even the devil, however much we know that this is the devil, can actually come and be cleared to run for office.
It's more than a moral issue. The case that has been brought against the 20 includes issues that filter to the ground, everything from rule of law to integrity, management of funds and public trust. All those things filter down to the public. And why it is so important for us as citizens of Kenya is because when we see things happening on the top and nothing happening, we've adopted a stance of it's never that serious. We've become inured to such cases. I remember a certain report stating that at least daily the average Kenyan goes between 12 to 18 instances of vice or corruption every day. So this is why this case is important. So it's not just about morals, it's also about development issues, because the more corrupt we are, the more inured, the more accepting we are of these issues. It affects our economy, it affects our output. I'm thinking of different societal institutions like Ungwana who've tried for a long time to bring values and ethics into our curriculum and to our fore. But for some reason, because we don't see it enacted at the top, we're not taking it, which is why this case is so important. And it's good that we have such cases, and I'm hoping to see more of these.
Okay. We do understand we now have a stable signal from Eldoret, do we? Let's listen in.
And all the leaders who are elected in MCAs, and we know that as Jubilee, government, we are going to make it come 8th of August 2017. Thank you very much. I want to urge all the people of Uasin Gishu County, on that tarehe 8 mwezi wa 8, let's come out, all of us, and vote in all the leaders of Jubilee Party. Let's stand with our party, and we know at the end of the day, this is a cause that we know we wanted a change. Na mimi najua niko na imani na viongozi tumechagua this time round. Hakuna mwenye alifosiwa achague mwingine. Let's stand together and support all the leaders who won. Sawa sawa. Yes. Asanteni sana na Mungu awabariki. Thank you. I think today, with great humility, I acknowledge the women of Uasin Gishu County who vied for various seats. Many of them vied for woman representative alongside me, and there are those who vied for positions of MCA all over Uasin Gishu County. We do know that in Uasin Gishu, only one woman MCA did make it. And I have, as soon as I was announced as the winner, one of the things I did was reach out to each of these women, and I told them that the fact that they dared to stand shows that they are leaders in their own right. And I reached out to them and said, let us work together, because the work ahead of us is for them, not for me. So I want to appreciate my sisters here and pledge that I will work with them, and I appreciate them for reaching out and saying we will work with you and support me. And we shall roll out the campaign. We will show that women can make a difference to our party, because we also want our party, Jubilee, to value us as women. And so we are going to work very hard and seek votes for Jubilee, so that they can know that we are part of the party and a significant part of the party. So we thank you, and I appreciate all of you, and I appreciate each and every one of you, and we shall work together. Thank you very much, and I think we'll hear from one more woman.